Hello, Mike Ackerman here, artist, filmmaker, historian, self-proclaimed D-Day Omaha beach nerd, and hater of arrogant rich boomers spreading misinformation.
That's the real deal.
That's right, I think everyone knows by now I got a bone to pick with this Dragonman guy and his Museum of Fud lore. But before we get into that, I have returned from my Normandy trip, and it was more than what I had asked for. I explored all over the place, I went into some really exclusive areas that most people aren't allowed to go to, I met a lot of really cool people, and I documented all of this for future videos. And you deserve to see all that footage because, well, you made that trip happen, so thank you so much for your support. I mean, it was amazing, so thanks again, and let's get back to King Boomer here. The splash made by my video on Dragonman's D-Day room actually gave me some hope for the war history realm. There were some great comments on it, some great personal stories that people had who had actually interacted with the guy, who had actually visited his museum, which only reinforced my negative opinion on the guy. And I learned a bit more myself. I said that whole thing about the web slings not being a thing until like the summer of 1944, but as a few of you pointed out in the comments, you can actually see Rangers with web slings getting ready for D-Day back in England, so I didn't know that. That's really cool, you know? Always be open to learning, that's what it's all about. Of course, there were some stupid comments, you know, some straw man arguments, some arrogant jackasses who just don't like it when someone younger than them is talking smack. If Dragonman happened to be like my age or even younger, I'd still call him out on his BS. But something I want to address that I've seen for years now when it comes to history debates is this.
So when did you serve in the military?
I'm sure you've seen that thrown out before, it might have even been thrown at you, and you just might be one of those morons typing it out right now. No, I never served in the military. I never claimed I served in the military, I never gave the impression I served in the military, and I don't wish I had served in the military. More importantly, you don't need to serve in the modern military to study war history, so what the hell is that question even about? It's like one of those meaningless responses where you know you've won the argument when you hear it. For people who have served in the military, good for them, but that doesn't automatically mean that they're better than everyone, and that everyone should bend the knee to them. Also, let's not be like Dragonman and just make stuff up. I saw a couple people make this stupid, pointless, and incorrect comment to somehow defend this guy. No, Dragonman is not a Vietnam veteran. He was drafted into the army during the Vietnam War, but he just worked on anti-aircraft guns at Fort Bliss in New Mexico. To give Dragonman just a little credit, his video on his Vietnam room does show photos of himself in the army at Fort Bliss, but he never says in that video that he was in Vietnam. I think if he was, he would have at least mentioned it in a video about the Vietnam War. But so what? I don't care that Dragonman was just in the army and never went to Vietnam. Hell, I wouldn't care if he was in Vietnam and was like John Rambo. What does Dragonman's military service back in the late 60s have to do with World War II history? If you're wrong, you're wrong. I don't care if you're a vet. Now, am I jealous of Dragonman? I'm certainly not jealous of his musty museum of inaccurate crap. I love to study the history, but I'm not a collector, so piles and piles of memorabilia usually don't tickle my fancy, even if it is all original stuff. I would admittedly say that I'm jealous of his bank account. I think, you know, anyone would be who wouldn't want financial security for life. I'm certainly not jealous of whatever shady shit he's had to do to get that money, though. Look up some of the comments on Google for his place and what some people have said who have done business with him. And yes, people, I know I'm being rude. I'm being rude because this guy deserves it. If you're offended by that, I don't know what to tell you other than grow a pair. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, excuse me, sir, thank you for your service, but can I add something to that? Dragonman not only spreads myths and lies to impressionable people, but it's all for his sleazy business he created to fill his pockets, boost his ego, and compensate for his tic-tac dick.
What do you guys think of that?
So yes, I am being rude because I have no respect for this old scumbag. Fuck him. But 90% of the comments were great. They were funny and enlightening and super interesting. A lot of the personal stories I found really interesting. And in terms of other videos of Dragonman, the one that got mentioned the most was his Nazi room. So guess what? It's round 2. I have actually seen this one before, I think a few times even with my friend Mike B and a few of our other friends. It's difficult to say though because Dragonman will upload multiple videos on the same thing. So, like, over the years, he's come out with 4 or 5 videos just on the Nazi room. I'm just watching the first one that popped up when I typed in Dragonman Nazi room. I do want to preface this that I do not consider myself a super nerd expert on all things World War II German. I know some people who are just like, you know, they're like Rain Man when it comes to that stuff, but I do not consider myself that, so there's probably going to be a lot of things that I miss. If I don't know something for certain, I'll say so, and if you know, please say so in the comments. I'll do my best though. So let's have Dragonman take us through what he calls his Nazi room.
Good morning, guys. Dragonman here. I'm in the Colorado Springs Military Museum, and I'm going to show you my Nazi collection. Come on in.
All right.
This here is one of the most interesting rooms that most people want to see and learn about, and you'll really learn a lot if you come see my military museum.
Just glancing into this place, I really do feel like, you know, this might be some closeted Nazi shrine to the Third Reich. You know, I feel like I'm Michael Douglas in Falling Down, being led into that back room of the surplus store with all the neo-Nazi worship shit. Is Dragonman gonna sell me, or try to hand me an M72 rocket launcher and tell me to go kill black people? I'm joking, but he actually might do that. Just look at the abundance of party banners with the windmill of peace on them. Sorry, let's get technical. The Hakenkreuz. All the flags that cover every inch of every wall in this place. It's like he's trying to replicate Nuremberg, or Edward Furlong's room in American History X. As my good friend Paul Woodage said when I visited him in Normandy, once your display goes from looking like a collection to a shrine, that's when it starts to get a little weird. I don't believe he's trying to teach anything with this setup. He's just going for shock value and edginess. We're off to a real lame start.
This is a machine gun bunker. The Nazis had the fastest shooting machine guns in World War II. This is one.
I said it for the D-Day room, and I'll say it here. A couple sandbags lined up. That doesn't qualify as a bunker. That's just a sandbag position. What the hell is up with the tripod, the anti-aircraft tripod with the party armband stretched over it? Again, he's not going for anything authentic or realistic. He's just trying to create shock value. Still got the styrofoam mannequins covered in plastic. That's great. Looks like they're all SS. The one on the right looks like his collar might be for maybe early Estonian SS or maybe Nordland SS. I can't tell. I can tell that he has a General Assault badge and an Iron Cross second class, and looks like he, has a Sturmgewehr leaning up against his dick.
All the ammunition I have here was packed 1938. See that? All the head stamps in World War I and World War II from all the different countries have the dates in back of them.
All right, so that's cool and all, but the thing that he fails to mention is that those are ammo boxes for Austrian-made 8mm ammo for M95 30 carbines. They're not 8mm rounds for Kar 98Ks. Those ammo boxes looked completely different. It's ammo made under Nazi Germany, but it's for Austrian carbines that mostly went to, like, police units and such. It's not an inaccuracy, but it is interesting info that he could have put in here rather than just saying, here are their ammo boxes.
Okay, they also had the Tiger tank, 80-ton tank, 88mm gun.
Oh boy, just randomly brings up the Tiger tank. No preface on any background with German armor vehicles. He doesn't talk about, some of the more ubiquitous German vehicles like Panzer IIIs or IVs or the self-propelled guns. He just instantly goes to the Tiger tank because everyone remembers Saving Private Ryan.
So next time you're watching that movie Saving Private Ryan, look at the movie Saving Private Ryan.
And the Tiger 1 tank, 80 tons?
80-ton tank?
Not quite that heavy. I don't remember the exact number when it comes to the weight of the Tiger tank. I think it was like 50 to 60 tons. Definitely not 80 tons. I think that would be more like the Jagd Tiger or something like that. Probably not even that much.
Twice as heavy duty, twice as powerful as the Sherman American tank, which only had a 37mm projectile that used to bounce off the Tiger tank.
Of course, he just mentions this because he wants to go with this underdog shit. What does twice as heavy duty mean exactly in comparison to the Sherman tank? Like, physically, it was twice as heavy? Actually, I think it was. I think the American Sherman was like 30 to 40 tons. And again, I think the Tiger tank was like 50 to 60. I'm not certain, but I think it was. But more weight does not equal better performance. He doesn't want to talk about any of the drawbacks with the Tiger tank, like how it used up a lot of resources, it broke down frequently, and the fact that in comparison to other German vehicles, the Germans didn't make too many of them. He just wants to talk about it, though, as an unstoppable wonder weapon that the Americans had to overcome. And did he seriously say that the Sherman tank fired a 37mm round? Because no, the Sherman M4 and its variants all fired 75 and 76mm rounds. He's thinking about the M3 Stuart tank when he says that. That did fire a 37mm round.
Okay, they had the Bismarck, the biggest battleships.
I swear it's every sentence with this guy. The Bismarck was not the biggest battleship of World War II. That would be the Yamato-class battleships that the Japanese built. Hell, even the American Iowa-class battleship was bigger than the Bismarck.
But Hitler's biggest mistake, June 22nd, 1941, he decided to take over Russia. All his generals told him it was a bad idea, but you can't tell Hitler what to do. You go to the gas chamber.
Okay, Dragonman, so in regards to Operation Barbarossa, which was the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, you first say...
All his generals told him it was a bad idea.
But then you follow that up with...
But you can't tell Hitler what to do. You go to the gas chamber.
So are you saying that all his generals questioned him, and then he sentenced all of them to die in gas chambers? What's your source on that? Could you tell me the names of the German generals throughout World War II who questioned Hitler and then were then executed in gas chambers? Because I don't know any of them. Why is it I've never heard of these people before?
So the next day, June 23rd, 1941, he started to send 3...
Boy, he's really stammering in this one. The next day, June 23rd, Hitler decided on June 22nd to invade Russia, and then the next day it commenced? No, Dragonman, that's not what happened. Operation Barbarossa was in the planning stages for almost a year. They started right after, the Wehrmacht was beaming from their success in Denmark and Holland and France and other countries like that. And Barbarossa commenced on the 22nd, not on the 23rd. It's also funny how he doesn't mention any historical context about why Germany invaded the Soviet Union. It just happened, who cares why?
1 million to Stalingrad, 1 million to Leningrad, 1 million to Moscow.
Oh boy. I mostly focus on the Western and Mediterranean fronts of World War II, but I didn't realize my knowledge of the Eastern Front was this rusty, because I've never heard of the cities Stalingrad and Leningrad before. Now, I have heard of Stalingrad and Leningrad, but if that's what Dragonman meant, it only further complicates things. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, lasted from June to December of 1941. The siege of Leningrad did actually start as part of Barbarossa, but it continued afterwards and went all the way up until 1944. The drive on Moscow was also part of Operation Barbarossa, but it came to a halt in December right at the end of the operation. Now, Stalingrad, the Battle of Stalingrad, which started in the summer of 1942, was not part of Operation Barbarossa. Stalingrad was not a major objective during the invasion, Dragonman. It came to be one later, after the invasion. I'm sorry, Eastern Front historians, but Stalingrad and, I guess, Kursk are kind of the only battles Americans think about when they think of the Eastern Front, regardless of when or where they happened. Dragonman probably just thinks that Stalingrad was the entire Eastern Front campaign just because he watched Enemy at the Gates. And I'm just going to ignore those numbers he threw out, 1 million here, 1 million there. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's not that cut and dry.
33 below zero. 80% of all his soldiers still had their summer uniforms on. That one winter, he lost 1.5 million men. Most of them froze to death.
80% had their summer uniforms. What does he mean by summer uniforms? Like their HBT uniforms? First off, where do you get that 80% figure? I've never heard that before. And second, the standard infantry uniform during Operation Barbarossa was still the M36 wool tunic. Yes, there were units that had the HBT uniform at the start of Barbarossa, mostly in the southern region, but the majority of the troops during Barbarossa would still be wearing the wool uniform. And during that winter, guys were issued the M35 winter greatcoats. You can see photos of that. They were definitely inadequate for the Russian winter, but they did have them. Not everyone was wearing the HBT summer uniforms. I would say that 1.5 million statistic is a bit much, and from the D-Day video, we already know Dragonman loves to inflate these death tolls. I'm not going to throw a specific number out there because stuff like that varies so much depending on the source. But from what I do know about the German deaths of Barbarossa, I would say half that would be more accurate. I also wouldn't say most froze to death. There were people who did freeze during that winter. I mean, it was really brutal, but most implies that most of the deaths were because of freezing instead of the fighting, and that's just not true.
Right now, I have every helmet and every uniform the Nazis wore, 1914 to 1945. Right there is a very big accomplishment.
I guess good for you, Dragonman. Did he just say 1914 to 1945? I don't think that was a slip-up because I just saw a huge line of Pickelhaube helmets, and those were phased out in 1916. So, according to Dragonman, Nazi Germany originated during World War I. So I guess if you mention the Weimar Republic to Dragonman, he'll tell you it didn't exist. It just went German Empire to Nazi Germany. Mind-blowing.
I'm going to name a couple right here. This is the artillery sergeant. We got the Panther, that's a tanker. We got the Luftwaffe, that's the Air Force. We got the African Corps. We got the SS uniform, the camouflage uniform. Very, very rare.
Okay, let's go back to one. I can't comment on any of these swords that are leaning up against these mannequins' dicks. I'm sorry, I can't. If you know anything about these swords, please leave it in the comments. He calls the first one artillery sergeant. One, that's not a rank in any branch of the German military. Two, that's a Waffenrock for a non-commissioned officer. It's a parade tunic for ceremonial events. You would never see something like that on the battlefield. And it has nothing to do with artillery because, as you can see, the white piping on it, that's for infantry. If it had anything to do for an artillery NCO, then it would be red piping. What did he call the next one? Panther tanker? Like this is a uniform specifically for Panther tank crews? Well, that was never a thing. The plastic sheets aren't helping with these, but it looks like just a standard Panzertruppen uniform for a tank crew. You know, it's also called a Panzer wrap. Black tunic, hair Totenkopf collar insignia, and outlined in rose pink piping. The next one he properly states is a Luftwaffe uniform, so good job, Dragonman. It's a dress uniform. I can't tell what the rank is, but it's for a pilot because the collar insignia is yellow, and you can see his pilot badge and operations clasp. He's quite decorated. He's got the German cross and what looks like merit cross, I'd say. He has a tropical style title cuff, meaning that he was in the North Africa campaign, and he was there for at least 4 months flying missions. I'll give him credit. This pilot's uniform's not bad, and he was vague about it, but he didn't say anything inaccurate. But then we go to the next one, which is meant to be the Africa Corps uniform. I can't tell if that's sun-bleached or a bad repro. Tropical cotton uniforms that were used by the Africa Corps were actually an olive green color, but as time went on and they were in places like Egypt and Libya and Tunisia for months and months and months, they would become sun-bleached and they turned from the olive green color into this brownish tan color and then almost khaki. So this has caused a bit of a misunderstanding that the German Africa Corps had these tan uniforms for desert fighting. I also think there's been some confusion with the tan tropical uniforms that the Luftwaffe wore. Those were like this yellowish tan color, and you see pilots as well as paratroopers and ground troops wearing those throughout the Mediterranean, like the Hermann Göring Panzer Division. You see them in Sicily and in North Africa wearing that yellowish tan uniform. They're a completely separate thing from the Africa Corps, though. But this has led to some reproduction companies making these tan hair infantry uniforms. So sometimes you see mannequins in museums and reenactors wearing these tan uniforms that didn't exist. If this is an original tunic that was sun-bleached, you would have to look under the pocket flaps and the lining to see if it has any of its original olive green color. The pith helmets, sure, some had that, but not many, and especially not in combat. And I would have put a canvas web belt on him rather than the leather belt. The next one is the basic SS Feldgrau uniform, and the mannequin is wearing a gas mask for some reason. Are we going for some Medal of Honor airborne thing here? Some Nazi Storm Elite fantasy? I get it. Gas masks look cool and threatening, but they really didn't use them that much during World War II because, well, they didn't use gas anymore on the battlefield. In fact, German soldiers valued gas masks so little that it wasn't uncommon for them to just get rid of them as the war went on so they could use the gas mask case to carry other things. And then the camouflage uniform, which he says is very, very rare. It's not rare because, as you can tell, it's a fresh reproduction. It's of a Waffen-SS Erbsenmünster uniform, or Dot 44 uniform. It's not faded, it's not worn out, you can still see the creases in it. That uniform is one of the most favorite amongst SS fanboys and reenactors. So many reproduction companies make those things, they're not rare at all. And I can't entirely see it because of the stupid plastic, but it looks like that mannequin's helmet cover might also be that Dot 44 camo pattern. The SS never made helmet covers with that camo pattern, but for some reason over the years it's become a thing amongst reproduction companies to make these Dot 44 helmet covers. You can even see them in movies. They never existed though.
1943, the jet fighter uniform. The Nazis had the first jet fighter used in World War II, and this is the complete uniform, from the leather skull hat, the goggles, the gloves, to the boots.
Okay, again, it's difficult to tell because of the stupid plastic. That could be a Luftwaffe flight suit, it's hard to tell, but it also kind of looks like Kriegsmarine leather coveralls to me. It is a bit of a gray area because the Luftwaffe had so many different types of flight suits throughout the war, and sometimes pilots would purchase their own civilian ones. I can't really see the cap. The goggles look more like tinted welding goggles than aviation ones. I can say that the German jet fighter pilots never had a specific uniform. You know, what they would be wearing would be the same as like an Me-109 pilot. And he says that this is the jet fighter uniform of 1943. Well, Germany definitely had jet prototypes throughout the war, but the official fighter jet to be introduced in the war was the Me-262 in April 1944, not 43.
Okay, over here we got the SS, we got the Gestapo in charge of the death camps, and over here we have the general.
What did I say? It's every sentence with this dunce. So, from what I can see through the plastic, that's not a Gestapo uniform. That looks like an early Allgemeine SS uniform, the black uniform that you mainly see in the 1930s. That was eventually phased out during the war. If it were a Gestapo uniform, then it wouldn't have the SS runes on the collar. That's the main way you can tell. And no, Dragonman, the Gestapo did not run the death camps. The Gestapo was Nazi Germany's secret police throughout Europe during the war. If you wanted a mannequin to represent the concentration camp personnel, you should have had someone with the SS Totenkopfverbände. They'd have the SS Totenkopf skull instead of the SS runes on their collar tabs. And I just love the SA dagger that he stabbed through the plastic under the belt. Like, yeah, that's how they wore that. And then what does he call the last one? The general? Yeah, don't bother to easily look up the collar insignia to find out what the actual rank is. This mannequin here, he has 4 what are called pips on his collar, and that's an SS rank for Sturmbannführer, and that's a rank equivalent to major, not general.
Okay guys, take a look at this collection, because you won't see a better collection than what I put together in my museum. 86 show cabinets full.
Yeah, I get it, Dragonman. You like bragging about all your shit you've bought, but what the hell am I learning about history? Nothing.
Here's every Maltese Cross, 1914 and 1945.
Maltese Cross? No, those are Iron Cross medals, not Maltese Cross.
This here's called a political uniform, just like Hitler used to wear. 1933, here's 5 pictures of Hitler wearing a uniform, just like that. Unbelievable.
You know what's unbelievable, Dragonman? You spelled Adolf Hitler with PH instead of an F.
You won't see a better collection than what I put together in my museum.
Oh god, he even drew a mustache on the styrofoam head. We need to let people know this is Hitler. Quick, get me to Sharpie so I can put the mustache on him. This is not a political uniform nor something Hitler would wear. This is a Gauleiter uniform. It's what the head of a specific region within Germany would wear. You can see it has the Gauleiter collar tabs as well as the belt. You know, Hitler never wore any collar tabs. There's no rank insignia for Fuhrer of Germany. The left pocket does have Hitler's World War I medals he always wore, but they're not placed properly, and the wound badge appears to be the gold version, which Hitler did not have. I can't see what is on the right pocket, but Hitler would never have any kind of accommodations to put on his right side. And he has ribbon bars on his uniform. Again, Hitler never wore anything like that. Contrary to what most people think of when they think of a dictator, Hitler never adorned himself with tons of medals and ribbons. He usually just wore his World War I medals. I can't really make out what these ribbons are, but on the far right, he has 2 blue long service ribbons with eagles, and that means he's been in the military for at least 18 years. Fuhrer of Germany or not, Hitler was only in the military for 6 years during World War I. He never had a Wehrmacht long service medal.
Okay, let me show you the rarest thing I have in the museum.
Okay.
Okay, in 1944, Hitler's bodyguards were issued 15
Oh my God.
stainless steel gun belt buckles.
Yeah, sure they were.
Okay, so they wore this over here on that belt, but there's a gun in here. Let me show you. All we do is push the lever on the top here. See that? And see the barrels pop out? It shoots 3 22 short bullets.
Oh my God.
Right underneath here, it says 1944 SS and number 1 stamped on all the parts. And in the history books, they say that Hitler and
The history books, huh?
Hermann Göring and all the top-ranking
Yeah, Hermann
Nazis were issued these gun belt buckles.
In the history books. Okay. Well, you know, Dragonman, I do read a lot of Osprey publishing on uniforms and such. Which one of those history books mentions these super cool and rare gun belt buckles? Oh, none? What a surprise! Not only is Dragonman more proud of this belt buckle gun than anything, it's probably the most infamous, ridiculous thing he has in his collection. But the history of these so-called Nazi gun belt buckles is actually way more intriguing than Dragonman just saying, "The Nazis had these gun belt buckles, ain't that something?" Again, I am not a fanatic super nerd when it comes to all things Third Reich, but I do know that these gun belt buckles are quite controversial amongst collectors and historians, and Dragonman here has only added fuel to the fire. I don't know the guy's name, but there was a patent in the 1930s for a belt buckle gun similar to this, but there really isn't any documentation or proof that something like this was ever made by the SS during the war. People who do say that a handful of these were made during the last months of the war say that they were like a last-ditch weapon for the SS when they were being captured. What's widely believed, though, is that somebody heard about that patent from the 1930s for a gun belt buckle and made these as a scam in order to make big bucks off gullible people like Dragonman. And I have to agree with that. I understand it gets a bit controversial with the patent and all, but there are just too many red flags to take this seriously, even as like a last-ditch prototype weapon. One running thing I hear about these is that they are heavy as hell and can't really be worn as a belt buckle for very long. The whole thing is just impractical. It only fires 3 or 4 22 short rounds that, if you're lucky, are just going to lodge themselves into somebody's gut. It's more than likely not going to be fatal. It's definitely not going to be instantly fatal. And anybody who's going to try, like, reaching down to fumble with this thing and point it in the right direction, they're going to get shot before they even have time to pull the triggers. They'd be better off to just pull out a sidearm. Another thing is that the buckle itself is different on every example I've seen. Sometimes they're like brass, sometimes they're steel, sometimes they're curved, sometimes they're squared off, sometimes it has the regular hair eagle despite being made for the SS. I've seen a couple examples that do have the SS eagle, but most of them don't. The eagles never resemble any kind of belt buckle that was actually used by the SS or the Wehrmacht. It just looks like some Hollywood prop from Indiana Jones or something. There is no evidence of these things ever being used. there aren't any photographs of guys wearing them, and that would be easy to spot. If there happen to be photographs of guys wearing these, you could easily see them in photos. The most I can believe is that somebody might have made a couple prototypes of these based on that 1930s patent, and then right at the end of the war, some lucky soldier liberated some, which led to this whole thing about the Nazis had gun belt buckles. But of course, Dragonman doesn't go into any of that stuff I just mentioned. He just wants to say that the gun belt buckles were used by all high-ranking Nazis at the end of the war, and that's it.
And Heinrich Himmler, he had one too.
Oh yeah, Heinrich Himmler. I've heard Dragonman talk about this guy before. I've never heard of him. I know Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, but Heinrich Himmler, that guy must have been way more obscure. Maybe he was one of the guys who helped Hitler escape to Argentina.
If I was Hitler, I'd probably want number one. If I could prove that Hitler had this gun belt buckle and wore it, it would be worth millions of dollars.
Yeah. Good luck proving that, Dragonman. You're better off trying to prove that you got one of Hitler's teeth from his recovered jawbone.
Isn't that something?
I love how he ends this whole thing on the belt buckle with that point as well. Like, it's not the history of it, it's just the fact that it's worth millions and millions of dollars to him. Clearly, that is what's most important. Really goes to show where this guy's priorities lie.
So this is super rare.
And you got super gypped by a scam artist.
The rarer thing, wooden bullets. Did you guys know the Germans practice with wooden projectiles? The British and the Germans practice with wooden projectiles.
Yeah, and so did many other countries. Training rounds are basically the same thing today, but they're made of plastic instead of wood.
This is a quarter-inch steel shield that the snipers used on their helmets, so the bullet won't penetrate the helmet when they're shooting the enemy.
Oh. Thank you for explaining that, Dragonman. I would have never figured that out, that a shield on the helmet was designed to protect the person's head. That shield, by the way, that's a World War I thing. I think it's called a Stirnpanzer, and that was an exclusive thing for M16 helmets during World War I. They didn't use that at all during World War II. And I think also, when it comes to World War I, they didn't use them that much, but that's beside the point. That shouldn't be in your Nazi room, Dragonman.
We got the stamps, we got the dishes, we got the landmines, all different kinds of stuff. Everything is 100% original.
That statement's 100% bullshit.
Okay, this is called the Panther-Shroud 88mm bazooka.
The Panther-Shroud 88mm bazooka. Just like those carbeams in the D-Day video, we're starting to get into weapons that I myself have never heard of before. And ones I've never seen. I have to admit, I've never seen a German anti-tank weapon with a blast shield in that configuration. In all seriousness, it's called a Panzerschreck Dragonman, or if you want to be a pedantic douchebag like myself, Raketenpanzerbüchse. And sure, it is the same type of weapon, and it was based on the American bazooka, but the American bazooka was its own thing. Just because, something is a rocket launcher doesn't mean it's automatically a bazooka. That'd be like calling an MP40 a Thompson just because it's also a submachine gun. And really, what the hell is going on with that blast shield? That is not how it would be fastened. You can actually see where it would be fastened on the launcher. Since Dragonman clearly doesn't research anything, he probably got this thing in pieces and just assembled it based on what he thought was right. Like, oh, I guess the blast shield goes there. Yeah, sure, whatever.
And here's another super rare gun here.
What the hell?
This here the Americans had made. Chevy Company got the contract in 1943 to make 1 million of these throwaway guns. They were put in a cardboard box and thrown out of the airplane so people in different countries could liberate their country.
What the hell does that have to do with any of this? That's an American-made FP45 Liberator single-shot pistol. That's not German. I guess he's mentioning this because that was designed to be dropped into occupied territories? Well, okay, but if that's the case, then where's the British Sten gun? But okay, let's talk about the Liberator pistol. Sure, he almost got everything right in his description there. They weren't made by Chevy, though. They were made by General Motors, and they were made in 1942, not 1943. What he just said about them being dropped into occupied territories within a little cardboard box is correct. The thing he fails to mention, though, is that they never were. In recent years, I have noticed these things starting to pop up in YouTube videos and online articles, and I think that's because they're kind of a, intriguing and unusual thing, and they're linked to covert aspects of war like resistance fighters and such. But the truth is that nobody wanted them. A lot of them were melted down for scrap or just dumped into the ocean. No military commander saw potential use for them, and there are no records that any made it to Europe. Now hang on, I see you typing. As a D-Day nerd, I am well aware of the one German account by Niklaus Lange that mentions FP45 Liberator pistols being used by the French resistance. But that account comes from the book D-Day Through German Eyes, which has been exposed as a fabricated piece of bullshit, with names like Niklaus Lange and their testimonies proven to be made up. So no, that book of lies does not count as proof that the Liberator pistol was used in France.
They're worth anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000.
Original ones, yeah, probably. I know that Vintage Ordnance makes reproductions of these things for like, I don't know, a few hundred. But who knows, that might be an original, I can't tell. But again, Dragonman, who cares how much it's worth? I don't care about that. I care about the history. I don't care about the worth.
We got all the different boots they wore. These are really special boots. These were made in the Poland death camps. These were issued to the Nazis when they were heading out to take over Russia in the winter of 1941.
In one of his other videos on this room, he says that the Germans invaded Russia in the winter of 1972.
And these were issued to the German soldiers when they were trying to take over Russia in the winter of 1972 to keep warm.
I'm glad he got it right for this one, though. What he doesn't get right, though, is that the Germans didn't have winter boots when they invaded Russia in 1941. The devastating winter of 1941 is what actually led to them creating boots specifically for winter conditions in 1942. They're called felt boots because of the felt material used in them, and they're basically inspired by the Russian winter boot covers. These things he holds up are completely different, though. I forgot the actual German name for them, but I've known them as cold weather sentry boots, and they're designed to be worn over the regular jack boots for sentry guards on duty. Their soles are made of wood. They have no flexibility whatsoever, and that's why they'd be used by sentries and other guys with rear echelon duties. You wouldn't see guys running into combat wearing these chunky things.
On this side is my Holocaust display. We have all the different armbands that they wore at the Warsaw Ghetto.
Oh boy. Alright, we're going to get into the Holocaust display. Unlike Dragonman, I will warn you, this is going to be covering some sensitive stuff, so there might be some disturbing photos shown during this segment. Not only by Dragonman, but by myself as well. If I have to argue something he's saying, I might have to show some disturbing photos, but again, give you the warning. Dragonman doesn't warn you about anything, and I think that's because he actually gets a kick out of seeing people recoil in horror. He likes to shock people and make them feel disturbed. It's pretty despicable that the Holocaust is basically a geek show in his museum. This is so bizarre. He's got this collage of random photos that he clearly printed off Google Images. I recognize every single one of these photos. He's got Heinrich Himmler, he's got Joseph Mengele, that famous photo of the German soldier with his arm blown off, and then just along with a bunch of other random victims of the Holocaust. No information plaques on anything.
Here, look at the ice pick. We got 2 inmates with the ice pick through the corpse's ears.
They wouldn't use an ice pick, okay? What he has physically sitting there in his display case is a pair of ice tongs for picking up giant blocks of ice. That's what they used to use before refrigerators. Those have nothing to do with concentration camps, though. What they're using in that specific photo is just 2 pieces of bent bar stock that have been crudely pinned in the center that they would hook around necks and ankles and other body parts that they could grab hold of. They wouldn't use ice tongs from the local Iceman to hook into the victim's ears, like he says.
They're probably dragging them from the gas chamber to the incinerator.
Well, yes, they are demonstrating how they would do that. I know that photo, though. It's part of a series of staged photos by the Americans at Dachau to show how the crematoriums did work. They did it with a real victim. They did do it with a real dead body at Dachau, but they are staged photos by the Americans to show how the crematoriums worked. The camp personnel would not be taking photos of this, but he doesn't care about that detail. He just wants shock value.
Yeah, look at a lantern from Buchenwald concentration camp. Maybe the last time that candle was lit was 80-something years ago.
Nope. That's a Luftwaffe lantern, Dragonman. That's, again, another item that reproduction companies make, in spades.
Original Holocaust uniforms, Buchenwald, Dachau, Auschwitz. We got all of them right here. I paid over $3,000 for each one.
Well, there are a lot more camps than 4, so no, you don't have all of them right there. I can't tell if those are original or not. I'm not an expert on concentration camp clothing and all that stuff. But after reviewing everything else that we've seen in this museum, I wouldn't be surprised if these are not originals. Looks like the guy on the left is a political prisoner because he has the red triangle. The woman has the yellow star with Z in the center, which I think means Croatian. I think that's right. I'm not certain. And what a surprise. He has to mention how much he paid for all of them, because that's what really matters to Dragonman.
Real fast, let me show you what I have here. I have stuff you'll never see at another museum because they won't allow it. I got soap from Auschwitz made out of human fat.
Yeah, they don't have what you have because what you have is mainly bullshit, and it's all presented with extremely poor taste. Who wants to listen to this guy brag about having soap made from human fat? I mean, that's so messed up. He says it like it's such a cool thing. However, the whole thing about soap being made from human fat from concentration camp victims is a myth that's long been debunked. The origins of the myth started during the war. I don't remember what the 3 letters were, but camp inmates thought that the 3 letters that were stamped into bars of soap stood for pure Jewish fat, but it actually just stood for the name of the production agency for soap. The myth was then reinforced and elaborated on when an anatomical laboratory in Danzig was found and searched by Polish and Russian forces, and they happened to find this soapy substance amongst the dead bodies in the laboratory. So they put 2 and 2 together and came to the conclusion that this was proof of the human soap thing. The thing is, though, this laboratory had nothing to do with the SS. No military personnel worked there. All of the bodies that were found within the laboratory were just medical cadavers. They weren't victims who died in death camps. And the soapy substance that was found amongst these dead bodies was just a greasy byproduct for cleaning cadaver parts. That is a very abridged version of the myth. There's a lot more to it than that. You can look it up if you want. I'll put some sources right here if you want to look into it yourself. Bottom line, the whole thing about soap being made from human fat of concentration camp victims is a myth, and the fact that Dragonman not only perpetuates this myth, but brags about these fake bars of soap that he claims are made from human beings is disgusting. And I don't mean that like, ew, gross, that's disgusting. I mean that like he's a disgusting, immoral weirdo for doing that.
I have 58 cans dated 1943.
Oh, yeah.
Zyklon B gas. Never opened. Look at the back.
Yeah.
Never opened. This is the real deal.
The real deal.
And if I wasn't a legal museum in the state of Colorado with the 501-C3 status, I wouldn't be able to have this.
Yeah. Dragonman's infamous original cans of Zyklon B gas, or as he calls them, Zyklon B. Let's talk about Dragonman's presentation here, because the way he presents this and the way he talks about his credentials, I have this tax-exempt status and blah, 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 as if that means anything to owning chemical weapons. He seems to think Zyklon B was like mustard gas or chlorine gas from World War I. I think in another video where he showed this stuff, he even said something like,
if this opens and it atomizes with the oxygen and vaporizes and we breathe it, we're dead like in 3 minutes.
It actually started as a pesticide in the 1920s, and then later during World War II, it became the go-to chemical agent to kill people in gas chambers. Although in order to make it super deadly, it had to have a support agent added to it, and I think that was silica, if I'm correct. But even then, it took about 20 minutes once it was being pumped into a room full of people to take effect to kill somebody. But the main fact about Zyklon B that Dragonman obviously doesn't know is that it only had a shelf life of 3 months until it went bad. So if Dragonman popped open that can of what supposedly has 80-year-old Zyklon B inside, nothing would happen. He could stuff all those pellets into his mouth like peanuts and they wouldn't do anything. But let's point out the obvious thing with these. These are not actual cans of Zyklon B from the Holocaust. I've seen these things before. You can buy them online. They're called like Holocaust Zyklon B teaching aid or something like that. They're cheaply made reproductions. Every single one of them has the same date printed on them along with Auschwitz, and they're just a basic prop for museums and schools. They're probably just made of tomato sauce cans filled with like hamster food or something, and then a fake Zyklon B sticker slapped on it. Actual cans of Zyklon B that were purchased by the SS were much larger than that. They were painted green, and they had a completely different label than that thing. They also didn't have the name of the camp stamped on them. Again, the SS didn't make these things. They purchased them from the manufacturer of Zyklon B. They wouldn't have things like the Reichsadler stamped on them.
I'm teaching people about military history. That's why I'm allowed to have it.
No, you are spreading myths and lies for your ego and bank account, you dumb piece of shit. Throw all those fake cans of the Zyklon B in the garbage where they belong, Dragon Man.
Yeah, look at this. This is what the top officers took to kill themselves. Watch how perfect this comes out. Cyanide.
Cyanide.
This is the real deal.
Real deal, people.
That's the cyanide they used to kill himself. Like Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, even Hitler took this.
Yeah, I gotta call you on your real deal crap again, Dragon Man. If it were the real deal, it wouldn't be red like that. If it were real cyanide, it would be clear. Cyanide has no color whatsoever, whether it's in powder form or liquid form. Now, I can't tell if what he holds up is an original brass container that would have held a cyanide capsule, but when he pulls it out, I can tell the liquid inside, it's fake. It's not real cyanide. He, or whoever he bought it from, probably just put red food coloring in that little glass vial, just so it looks foreboding when he pulls it out, and probably so you can really see it. But in reality, it would just be clear.
What they used to pull the bodies out of the gas chamber? Right here, serial number 324. See, there's the serial number. I have 2 of these now. They put this around the corpse's wrist or ankle. See, it locks. They pull the body out of the gas chamber. They'd hit this middle trigger. That would release the body.
He just makes stuff up. He just looks at stuff and builds his own fantasy around it and spreads that around on YouTube and to people who pay to come visit this place. That thing is an old school police handcuff device. They're called nippers, and they're made to clip onto a criminal's wrist, and the police officer can then escort them around. It's an old school police thing in Europe. I don't think they use it anymore, but no, they're not made to clip onto wrists and ankles in death camps and pull dead bodies around. Either he made that up just from when he bought it and came up with that story, or some other jackass who sold it to him told him that.
If the corpse had gold teeth, they pull it out and throw them in a box, just like this. These pictures are from Auschwitz.
No, they're not. They're from Buchenwald. I'm a photo nut, people. I study photos a lot. Those are famous photos from Buchenwald after the Americans liberated the place.
I have stuff you'll never see at other museums, and I'm always...
That's because to real museum directors, you're a laughingstock.
If you were a Nazi working in the death camps, okay, see the approval stamp? It's half on a picture.
If you were an SS guard working in a concentration camp, you would not have that. That is a Soldbuch. That is an ID booklet that a regular army soldier would get. You can even see the officer in the photo has regular army Litzen on his collar. SS guards who worked in camps wouldn't have a Soldbuch like that. They'd have what's called a Wehrpass, and that's essentially the same thing as that, except it's not for an army soldier. That right there is an army Soldbuch. It is not an SS Wehrpass.
Okay, see the approval stamp? It's half on a picture and half on a paper. Okay, look at this. I got the approval.
Oh, that's it. He was about to show us the stamp for the Soldbuch, and then YouTube took pity on us and decided to just shut that shit down. Either that or his camera just ran out of battery power and he just said, whatever, just upload it. What a professional. So there it is, Dragon Man's Nazi room. Incredible. In the worst way possible. Again, what I said about, some guy bragging about his collection, that's one thing, but when you're actively spreading myths and lies about history, especially when you're profiting off it, that's when you're a scumbag. He doesn't really care about history. He certainly doesn't care about actual Holocaust history. I mean, good lord. If you Google bad taste, there should just be an image of Dragonman that shows up. I've said it before, he seems like a character from a sketch comedy or a hidden camera show. It's like he's an Andy Kaufman character where you're uncertain if it's a bit or if it's real. That's what it seems like to me, and if that were the case, then I would say this guy is up there with performers like Andy Kaufman or Sacha Baron Cohen or Nathan Fielder. But unfortunately, to use some of Dragonman's own words, he does seem to be the real deal.
The real deal.
Even though it is kind of fun to watch this guy just make an ass of himself and point out everything that's wrong in his museum that he claims is more accurate than anything, I don't plan on making a whole series of Dragonman videos. I think I got my licks in with the D-Day room and especially this one, and I really don't want this to turn into something like Joe Exotic going after Carol Baskin. I care about the history, but not enough to go on an obsessive crusade against this guy, which results in an exploitation Netflix documentary. And that right there would be the clip they would use at the end of episode 1. Going back to the D-Day video, there were a number of people who commented that I should actually go out there and confront Dragonman in person. 1, what would that accomplish? Dragonman is a dumb, stubborn, rich old boomer who is stuck in his ways. He doesn't want to listen to what I have to say. 2, unlike Dragonman, I'm not made of money. I also don't have all the time in the world. I live in Idaho, and I'm not driving 13 hours to his place just so he can kick me out for interrupting his tour.
I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
And that would be it. And I wouldn't be nice to him because I have no respect for the guy. So, no, I am not wasting my time and money to go confront him. My goal with these videos is not to change Dragonman. That's a fruitless endeavor. I just want more people to say, fuck this guy, don't listen to what he says. Because there are a lot of people who do. So I think I can put the nail in the Dragonman coffin with this video, but please let me know what you think of his Nazi room in the comments, and let me know if I missed anything. I know I did. There's so much crap everywhere. I couldn't keep track of everything. I do have more videos in the works that are not related to Dragonman, such as going over every documented German machine gunner on Omaha Beach. So stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.